So Nick Shook of NFL.com just put out an article using NFL Next Gen stats to analyze the top 10 NFL deep ball passers in 2022. Now, you know why I'm making this video, Broncos country. It's pretty clear who's going to be on this list. And the narrative out there is that Russell Wilson is washed and can't play at a high level anymore. But when you look at the stats and when you watch the tape, that is clearly not the case. Yes, Russell Wilson did struggle last year, and some of it was stuff that he's always struggled with, such as throwing over the middle of the field because of his height deficiencies, and some of it was even new struggles such as inconsistent accuracy, which we had never seen up till this point in Seattle, and also a diminished mobility, and I'm gonna mostly put that on the fact that he partially tore his hamstring week 1 up in Seattle. Before he suffered that injury in the fourth quarter of that Seattle game, he was looking good and looking mobile, and same thing in the final 2 games of the season when his hamstring had A, had time to heal, and B, when Nathaniel Hackett and Clint Kubiak were no longer calling the offensive plays and Justin Outen took over as the offensive play caller. We saw Russell Wilson use his legs more and more, and it allowed him to roll outside of the pocket and launch those moon balls deep downfield that we were accustomed to seeing. And on top of that, even from the pocket, Russell Wilson was still really good at chucking up those moon balls, and he was hitting them with accuracy, on time, and in stride to the receivers. Now, before we dive in and see where Russell Wilson ranks on this list, we need to learn about a couple of stats here. The first one is pretty obvious, and that one is adjusted completion percentage. Now, adjusted completion percentage is the quarterback's completion percentage when drops, bad throws that were complete, and other things that would have otherwise not affected his completion percentage, but really should affect their completion percentage. That's when all of those things are taken into account. Now, a quarterback's expected completion percentage is a quarterback's average completion probability using adjusted completion percentage, which represents the aggregate level of difficulty of a set of pass attempts. So essentially, it's the baseline completion percentage for your average quarterback in that given situation. Now, completion percentage above expected is a stat that has really been used more and more in evaluating quarterbacks, and although it's not a perfect stat, I do feel like it is a stat that holds some really high value. So it's the difference between a quarterback's actual completion percentage adjusted and their adjusted expected completion percentage, and that gives you a variance. And that's how we rank the quarterbacks, is who has the top completion percentage above expectation, and that number can go into the negatives as well. So although it's completion percentage above expected, you could also have a completion percentage below expected as well. Hopefully that makes some sense. Again, we're not the biggest stat people here on this channel. I'm more of a believer in watching the tape, but at the same time, I do feel like some of these stats are good at least telling you the what in each given situation, but it doesn't tell you the how or the why. But again, these stats are valuable and I want to take a look at it. So let's find out where Russell Wilson ranks here. At number 10, we've got Josh Allen with a passing score on deep balls of 93, Joe Burrow with a score of 96, Derek Carr with a score of 98, and here we've got Russell Wilson ranked as the 7th best deep ball thrower in the NFL last season with a deep passing score of 99 out of 100. On deep throws last year, Russell Wilson was 26-73 for 1,008 yards, 6 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and he had a 99.8 passer rating. His deep completion percentage was 35.6, and the expected completion percentage was 33.7. Let's see what Brooks had to say here about Russell Wilson's deep ball throwing. This one shocked me, and I suspect it will shock others as well. When I started this exercise, I didn't think Wilson would have much of a chance at ending up in the top 10, primarily because, well, he had a bad season. But despite the wide-ranging problems with Denver's offense in 2022, Wilson was surprisingly effective when it came to airing it out. He finished with the 2nd most deep attempts and passing yards of any qualifying quarterback, with a significantly better touchdown-to-interception ratio than he put up on non-deep throws, which was a 10-to-9 touchdown-to-interception ratio. Wilson deserves credit for posting these numbers despite being pressured on nearly 40% of his deep ball attempts. You have to hope that that number will go down significantly with Denver's new and improved offensive line this season, because if not, then we cannot expect to be successful. But credit to Russell Wilson for still being able to put up good deep ball numbers despite being pressured on 40% of his deep ball throws. Of course, one of the reasons he was pressured so much when going deep is likely that he tended to hang on to the ball too long and played slower than usual in 2022, which was absolutely true. One of my biggest complaints with Russell Wilson last year, and granted, he held on to the ball too long for all those years in Seattle too, but generally he was able to make up for it with his twitchiness and ability to escape the pocket, which I feel because of his hamstring injury last year he did not have. We'll see if that was indeed the case or if he's just lost a spring in his step. I'm not trying to rewrite history here. We all suffered enough when watching the Broncos offense last season to know things weren't exactly great. Even when throwing deep, Wilson wasn't elite, as reflected by his CPOE on deep throws, which helped pull him into the lower half of this group. However, one cannot deny that Wilson puts points and yards on the board on his passes downfield. Now, to finish off this list, we've got Patrick Mahomes at number 6 with a deep ball CPOE of 4%. Kirk Cousins with a deep ball CPOE at 8.5%. That's crazy. Dak, 10.3%, number 4. Jalen Hurts, 9.4%, number 3. Tua, 10.4%, number 2, and I wouldn't be surprised at all by this, but Geno Smith, number 1, a deep ball CPOE of 13.2. Geno Smith was a super efficient deep ball thrower last year, and that's with significantly less talent than Russell Wilson. That goes to show that Seattle's offense is really good at getting the most out of their quarterbacks with deep balls, and credit to Geno Smith, man, because he played really well in that system last year, and it shows both in the numbers and in the tape. But as far as Russell Wilson is concerned, the deep ball CPOE is a little bit low, but still, he did produce baseline yardage, and he was efficient downfield. He did miss some throws downfield, don't get me wrong, but he was still an elite deep ball thrower, and right here the numbers reflect that. Sean Payton should see this and be able to say, okay, Russell Wilson is still really solid with the deep ball. Let's go ahead and integrate that more into this offense. And you have to imagine that that's what the Marvin Mims pick was all about. At this point in time, we just cannot depend on KJ Hamler to stay healthy. And because of this, Russell Wilson needed somebody to be a more consistent deep ball threat. And I really feel like that was the main logic for the Denver Broncos drafting Marvin Mims. I really feel like he's almost going to be Tyler Lockett 2.0 for Russell Wilson. And he suffered greatly last year, Russell Wilson did, by not having that type of threat in this offense. So I'm curious, Broncos country, did these stats shock you at all about Russell Wilson still being a top 10 deep ball thrower in the NFL? And do you feel like Sean Payton will be able to get him higher on this ranking, maybe even in the top 5 or the top 3? Drop those comments down below, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts, as always. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and ring the bell so these videos appear in your notification feed. I would really appreciate it, guys. Those are 2 free and easy ways to show your support. It helps tell YouTube's algorithm to push us out to fellow members of Broncos country just like you and me. And until next time, guys, this has been another episode of Denver Broncos Syndicate. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.